Hey everyone, and after a long time, welcome back to City Skylines, back to the Aurelia city. In today's video, I would like to continue building the futuristic airport. We of course started the whole project in some previous episodes, so definitely do check them out if you want to see how we started. We already did the terminal building with the control tower, all the entrances for people arriving by cars. There are also the tram, bus, and train stations, and offices in front of the terminal building, as well as parking and lots of details all around the place. The whole airport is somewhat color matched. There is that orange color that appears on the roofs of various buildings, and that is something that we will continue doing even today. I would like to show you today how I completed the plane side of the airport, the passenger part. The airport as a whole won't be finished just yet after this video, but I will mention the future plans later. Anyway, since this is the first video after a really long time, in the second part I would like to mention the reasons for that and how I'm going to treat this channel going forward, and just do an update of what I've been up to and what's been going on. Also, I'm trying something new here. I'm recording the commentary first, reading from a script actually, because I'm really struggling forming sentences today for some reason. And after that, I will put the videos underneath it. This means I won't be limited by the time-lapse size as much, and I can talk a bit more freely. And the time-lapse will therefore serve as a background to the commentary and not the other way around as before. It won't be as edited as much, and also the cinematics will be inside the video and not all at the end. This should make the editing a lot easier for me. Alright, let's focus on the airport now. I downloaded some runways and taxiways from some packs and just started experimenting with various configurations, what kind of colors I want and geometry, setups and layouts and whatnot. I finally decided to do two parallel and one kind of random runway with almost black surfaces, and taxiway will be gray pavement-like surfaces. The idea here is that I don't really want to create the runways and taxiways all parallel into some sort of a grid like you see on some large real-life airports. It's probably more efficient and practical that way, but I just don't like how it looks like, so I chose this instead. The taxiways are of course going towards the terminal buildings, and since the individual terminal segments are not really following any particular angles or uniform angles, the taxiways of course need to copy that. So it's going to break the uniformness of the airport, which is exactly what I wanted. I had to turn off the mod that was making all the roads in Aurelia black instead of the usual vanilla gray. This is because the runways are incompatible with it. Maybe the taxiways as well, I'm not sure. They would disappear if you zoom far enough, and they would only show that void underneath the map. So there are unfortunately some gray roads visible in the video probably. I was able to go around this problem somewhat by using the new Network Skins 2, the second version of the Network Skins mod, which allows you, there is a new feature which allows you to repaint each individual segments of networks, but unfortunately there are a couple of highway roads and some other networks as well that cannot be repainted. I don't know why, but they just cannot. So I will probably turn the general black color mode of the roads on and off every time I look at the airport so that the taxiways and runways can be visible, but I'm gonna just turn it off obviously when I'm building some highways or something like that in the future. There's no way around it, sadly. Speaking of Network Skins 2 and the ability to repaint networks now to any color you want, you will see I used a special road for the maintenance vehicles on the airport itself. It's some sort of a German rural road, so not exactly fitting to the airport, but I repainted it to light green because why not? It kind of stands out that way and I really like it. Right at the start, I had to already plan the sizes of plane stands, so planes would have enough space. I wanted to include some futuristic planes, so I choose some concept or prototype planes from the workshop. There's the Sonic Cruiser, for example, and most importantly, the Boeing 2707, which is actually a pretty old concept, but it definitely does look futuristic. And this is a coincidence, by the way, but it exactly matches the orange color of the terminal, so that is really nice. It's a really big plane as well, and it will play an important role later. After that, it was time to start doing some detailing, mostly around the taxiways. And that was actually difficult to do because of the various intersections needed all kinds of lines and shoulders and different networks around them. I started by creating a procedural object circle with a size that I felt was right for some of the curves, and then I positioned the circle so it would create the taxiway shoulder around it, or I would create a taxiway shoulder around it. I did the same thing for the yellow lines through the middle of the taxiways as well, and just covered the rest of the area with some more taxiways to cover the grass. For the taxiway going through the center of the terminal, I used something that I saw, I think, on the Frankfurt airport, but it's probably used on several other airports as well. It's a taxiway that has multiple lanes, not just a single one in the center, but there is usually a sign, and it says something like maximum wingspan. And if your plane has, less than that, then you can use some sort of a side lane on that taxiway. And some sort of a similar sized plane can actually go right next to you or pass you in the opposite direction. So this obviously increases the capacity. Right here, these lanes are marked by the blue and orange lines. And on the intersections, they obviously need to go towards the rest of the yellow lines as well. The difficulty with this detailing, was that the lines are terrain conforming, but you have to put some networks over each other to avoid texture clipping and flickering and things like that. So sometimes the lines randomly stick to the ground below the networks, and it's just annoying to make them go back. But at the same time, I have the taxiways leveled, so I mean all around the airport I have them leveled, otherwise it would just not really work out. So it was kind of difficult to do, and in the end I decided to do the taxiway detailing only near the terminal buildings, as it was getting too repetitive to do. Now let's go back to the big planes, the orange ones. I needed some sort of futuristic element for the entire airport, so I decided to convert some of these planes into space planes. I took some inspiration from the 2001 Space Odyssey, if you know that movie. There is that space station docking scene right at the start where the spaceship does look like just a regular plane. Even inside of it, there are shots inside of the airplane from the pilot's view and stuff like that. And it definitely does look like a regular airliner. So why not do something like that for Aurelia? In the future, I imagined that traveling to at least some space stations above Earth would be something casual. So the space planes could probably be part of some big airports like this. Why not? Anyway, I used some factory chimneys to create, obviously using procedural objects, converting them into procedural objects. I used these chimneys to create a wider body for the planes and also put more engines at the back, maybe some like hybrid rocket engines probably, just like with in Kerbal Space Program. I think there's the Sabre engine that you can use for space planes, so maybe this is something similar. But the goal here was primarily to just make the planes look different. There are two models in the end, one with only 2 added engines and slightly smaller hull, and there's the second version with 4 engines, probably for more people or heavier cargo. I simply built the first one and experimented with something more for the second one, but at the end I didn't want to delete the first one, so I decided to keep both versions here. These space planes have 4 dedicated stands, and later I'm going to put some special markings on the ground to make them stand out a bit more, and I'm also going to build special gates for them with their own monorail. Another unusual element I wanted to add were the circular buildings that I already used to join the wide, long terminal buildings, but this time I placed them in the open between the taxiways, and I kind of wrapped the maintenance roads around them so they would go underground from both sides. There would probably be some sort of parking spaces for the maintenance vehicles or warehouses for all kinds of supplies and so on. The buildings themselves, of course, have the orange roof again, and they would probably be some sort of administration buildings, maybe some sub-control buildings and so on. Later, especially towards the center of the airport, I connected gates to these buildings as well for the smaller plane stands. So passengers are using these buildings as well. So there might be some lounges, restaurants, and so on. There are underground connection to these from the main terminal. Detailing the entire airport included the surfaces. I decided to use the concrete tiles made by Vasimer from the workshop. These work great because they are not decals, but they are props. So I can put networks over them without any issues, so that decals would obviously appear on networks, but props will not. So I can nicely overlap them without issues. Then I built the regular gates with all the assemblies connected to them. It was mostly just a copy-paste of the first one that I did. Some plane stands required two bridges to the planes, for larger planes of course. Some only have one, especially the smaller plane stands further away from the airport terminal. There are also the markings on the ground and identifiers for the individual plane stands. The airport is divided into 3 sectors, A, B, C, and the row of stands closer to the terminal starts with the number 1 always, and the row for the smaller planes with number 2. I'm not even sure if it's visible in the videos, but it's kind of a nice detail. I'm sure that these markings don't follow any real-life standards. Again, there are people who do all this super detailing realistically. I didn't, because I thought that it doesn't really add that much to the overall feel of the airport. And also, and that's probably more important, I'm no expert on these things, so I don't even know where all the markings should go. And some markings are just too difficult to work with as well. And for some reason, it really drives me insane when, and actually in general, I choose to do things exactly right in detailing wise, but I discovered that I cannot do that for various reasons. And in this case, because I simply don't know how. And also because it's really complicated sometimes. So I'd rather just use some kind of detailing that simply looks good to me without caring much for like hyper-realism. On the ground, there are also various vehicles and equipment. This is the usual stuff found on many airports, like the resupply and maintenance vehicles and so on. The monorail that goes over the white terminal buildings was changed since the previous episodes because I wanted to make it stand out more. It was white and obviously it was a bit lost on the roofs because they are also white. So I downloaded different vehicles for the monorail that can be completely repainted, and I chose blue color for that, which forms a nice contrast with the orange. And also I repainted the stations. I also had to add some sort of fake tunnel entrances where the monorail goes through the terminal buildings, the circular ones. It's just a small little detail, but it's looking rather nice. And the same tunnel entrances are also for the spaceplane gate buildings. Another futuristic element that I added are the sunken pads for vertical takeoff and landing. I think I built them last after most other stuff was finished because I was not exactly sure that the airport looks futuristic enough. So these pads are also hangars, and they are most probably connected to those circular buildings underground as well as the main terminal, of course. Here I used the futuristic blimps for the workshop, obviously as prop versions. I had to convert them into procedural objects and scale them down, which also allowed me to create a very cool looking cinematic that you will see here. I also used some smaller VTOL craft in here and some ground vehicles and decals for detailing. The whole thing is made using the concrete beam network, the same that I used for the construction site a long time ago. Then, just the regular concrete walls, fake grass, of course, all around it. And somewhere I used the hangar doors for actual doors. Overall, it ended up being an interesting futuristic element to the entire airport. Next, I needed to make the airport functional, and this took me a really long time. I placed a couple of working plane stands near the terminals and connected them to the taxiways, which was actually pretty difficult to do because of the issue that I talked about before, and that's the terrain conforming lines, because they would just jump up and down and sometimes disappear under the plane stands and all that. So that was really difficult. There were some planes coming from outside of the map and landing on the airport, but they were approaching the airport from really weird angles. I had to change some of the airways, but they were not really used much for some reason. I even tried building another hidden airport on the opposite edge of the map and created a plane line using a mod that allows you to create lines with planes just like you would with trains. But the planes were landing and taking off really weirdly. For example, landing on taxiways or landing on some super short distances, even when I limited the acceleration and braking of planes. So it simply didn't work. Now, in the end, I made the plane lines just between the plane stands on the airport itself. So the planes are just taxiing back and forth from one end of the airport to the other. It is surprisingly effective. It makes the airport seem alive, and there's just movement on the taxiways and on the airport. So that is pretty much all I wanted. So I'm more than fine with that. There are also the maintenance vehicles moving around the green paths and entering the underground and the terminal buildings. It really looks good how stuff is just moving here, and it's just not static display, of course. So that is probably all for the actual build. And now let's talk about the future of this airport and what still needs to be added. I have a basic idea about some cargo terminal. It's going to be a cargo hub between planes, trucks, and trains. The railroad will connect all the way to the industrial zone, so it's going to have also the industrial trains going towards it. It will have multiple levels, some sort of cranes and stuff, and hopefully it will look nicely futuristic. I also built some more highway connections from the airport, so I'm going to show you that too, probably. And I started planning the city expansion to connect the airport with the rest of the city. So there are plans for some cool looking new bridges over the river, maybe a harbor, and definitely more trams, lots of trams. Okay, so let's now move to the second part of today's video, and let's talk about why there were no videos in the past months and what does it mean for the future and generally what I've been up to and what's going on. So I'm gonna be honest, right at the start, I simply burned out from making cities video every week, actually 2 videos per week. Before that, it was simply not possible to maintain that while working, writing my PhD thesis, and generally having life, I guess. Sure, other people managed to do that just fine. I did too for a while, but not anymore. Also, the end of a year is usually very busy at work because people just want things finished. So while that is normal, and it will be the same this year, it certainly didn't help, of course. And the final push for me was when YouTube really poorly communicated the whole issue with the lawsuit from the FCC. You probably heard about this. When YouTube basically showed a big middle finger to all the creators and told everyone, literally, to find a good lawyer if we want to continue making videos. And that was pretty scary at first. Although, in the end, these couple of months later, nothing happened really. No one in the city's community, at least, got affected by this, as far as I know. It's not like I'm really digging into it now, but at that time, no one knew what's going to happen, right? But it simply pushed me to make the final decision to just focus on other things. But now we're here, and what does that mean? Am I back to regular schedule? Am I going to make videos like I did in the past, once a week at least? No, absolutely not. I can safely say that is never going back. Once every 2 weeks then, a month? No, actually no. I don't want to create any kind of schedule because I don't want to be bound by it. I just want to start treating all this as a relaxing hobby of some sorts and not a chore that I need to do every week, even when I wouldn't want to. That is probably the most important point of all of this. Because sometimes I'm going to be out of ideas. Sometimes the game is just going to be way too frustrating. And you know that cities can do that very effectively. And most of the time, I just won't have the time for it. Or sometimes I just don't want to even think about city skylines anymore, And I really don't want to go back to the times when I just disregarded all of these things to make sure that there will be a video every week. That is simply a textbook recipe for a burnout again, and it's just not worth it. So why keep making videos then? Is it because of money? Well, not gonna lie, the fact that this channel does generate me some income is partially a motivation to keep doing it. But honestly, if this was the main motivation, I would definitely steer the content in a different direction. More vanilla, I suppose, or almost vanilla friendly. But I don't really have a stomach for that, nor the skills, actually. So the income we are talking about here is pretty small, and it's just a nice bonus, nothing more. The main reason to continue doing this is because I really like building my cities. I really like being able to materialize some of my ideas for various things like layouts of roads or just buildings, districts, and details. But mostly I just like to create stuff, and I really like putting the results out there for you guys to see. So that's what made me open City Skylines again, and also the fact that I'm stuck home, all of us are probably, because of the health situation outside. I'm fine, by the way. Everyone around me is fine. Right, so that is all. That's the plan. Right now, I don't want to bother switching mod configurations for Altengrad, so that project is on hold. Again, don't ask me when I will return to it. I don't know. Let's now enjoy some final cinematics from the finished passenger part of the big Aurelia airport. If you guys have any questions, any comments, or just anything you'd like to say, add, feel free to write a comment down below. I'm probably going to return to using Twitter, maybe, and the community posts here on YouTube to keep you guys updated about various things, but mainly letting you know about future uploads, since there won't be a fixed schedule. If you are new here, you can check out some of the previous videos, maybe from the airport itself. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel. You can also share the video with your friends, and last but not least, leave a like. Thank you guys for watching, take care, and goodbye.